Hi there. In this tutorial, we are going to understand the Redux fundamental and the basics uses. So let's see how can we work with Redux. I have created a project in my first tutorial, so let's go further from this space. At first, I have to install the Redux library. So I have to install the Redux. Here I will use the core Redux library first, and then we will move to Redux toolkit in later chapter. Now create a file here, actually a directory. Import the create store from the legacy create store. Let's rename this function and this function require a reducer function. Let's create the reducer function here. And the reducer function needs two arguments, and another one is action, and we have to return something, return state. That means whatever we get from this function, reducer function, that return value will be available in our store. So let's pass some default value. Now if I console log here, instead of running the project, let's move our Redux store in my app directory. That means my app folder, app file, to connect our Redux. So for that I have to store. And now in my app directory, now if I save my file, I can see I get the three property, actually four method from the Redux. In the Redux store we have nothing. Actually it is the initial value. Now let's copy this four method and we will understand all the method one by one. The first method is the getState method. This method is used to access our Redux store. That means now in our Redux store has a default value. Let's see how can we access this default value from my store. In our store, if I type getStore, if I save my file, getState, actually getState, I can see the default value passed from my store, Redux store. So we can see that this method used to to read or access the store. Now we have second method, that is the dispatch method. This method used to dispatch or add something in the store. So let's see how we can do that. For that, in the dispatch method need an object, and that object must have a type property. Let's give a dummy type. Let's request it, and the value. Now if I pass anything inside this Redux store in this dispatch method, that value will be available in the reducer function's action property. Let's console log our dispatch value here, and comment out this log, so we can see that only the action value will show here. Now we can see that whatever value we pass from our dispatch, we get that value by the action argument in the reducer function, and we will update our reducer our Redux store by this reducer based on this action property. In our dispatch, we pass an object with two property. So in the state action, we have two property. So if I pass a object instead of a function value, so let's type a payload, it will be an object. Now if I save my file, I can see I get the same value. Let's see, when we pass a reducer function, that value will available in our when we pass anything in the dispatch method, that value will be available in our reducer, and we have to update our store based on some condition. So instead of passing if else condition, we will use switch condition. So and this condition will check based on the action type. So it will be return the state value. Actually I am going to copy the old state value, and then I will update my state value here. So I am passing a user from the payload, so I will store the value in a user property. This property is a completely new property, so the value will be action.payload. Now let's create this property in our Redux store, so that when in the initial value have a Redux user property too, and the initial value is null. Now if I save my file, and instead of console log, remove the console log, and let's see the value from the store. If I save my file, I can see now this time our store has a user property with the same value that passed from this dispatch method. So this way we have to create multiple dispatch method to handle our state in the store with the reducer function. Now there it may be little bit confusing that how the Redux store works. Actually, Redux store works that when we pass anything, that property actually Redux store work in such a way that it is called pipeline functional pipe. It is called pipe function. For example, let's see an example. For that, suppose I have a file called package.json. How can I am reading a file by the cat command. Now I am using a pipe symbol and using the search command. Now I am finding the start text, so I am typing start. Now I can see that in the file I have a start match. That means it is one command and I pass the output of this command to the next command, and that happens by the pipe symbol. That means Linux has a concept to pass one command return one command output to another command. This is called a pipe symbol, a pipe feature. In JavaScript also has a pipe function to pass one function value to another. So Redux use the same concept to handle the state value. When we use the middleware, we will see that how we pass how our dispatch method value goes through function to function, and then in the last value and the last function is the reducer function. When comes through all the middleware and finally reach to the reducer function, and reducer function handle the data into the Redux store. Now we already talked the second method, this dispatch method. Dispatch method used to update the store value or the store. Now we have the another method called the subscribe. The subscribe method is an event handler or event listener. Like regular JavaScript, in the DOM we can have some events like click events, update events, click events, change events, select events, etc. Similarly, node.js has some events. So Redux store is based on their events. So the subscribe method is an event that which has a function callback that trigger when our store updated. So when store updated, that means it will do something when the store updated. So let's see in action. For that, I will create, instead of if I console log instead of here to here, that means before the dispatch, then I do not see the update value, because our update happens after the dispatch. That means if I log this log the state value after the dispatch, I will get the updated value. So we have the subscribe method to handle this kind of scenario. That means whenever we change something, update our store, our get store value will be updated, will be logged. So let's see how can we do that. Store dot subscribe, and it is a event listener. Actually, by default, event listener has two property. First one has event listener like data, and second one has a callback function. But this subscribe method is built in only with the store method, so we do not need to pass the first argument. Just the second argument is used to show the update value. It will trigger every time our store value changes. So let's move the code here. Now as soon as we try to update our state, our subscribe method will be logged. So if I comment out this describe method, I can see there is no updated, though there is no log, even because I do not change our store. So as soon as I change our store, our log will be available. Now we can see our log appears. So this is the three method to handle our Redux store. Another one is the replace reducer. This method is used to the change or update the reducer function. Actually, when we know that reducer is a callback, and callback function will be called inside the create store function whenever it needed. So by default we no need to change our reducer function's functionality. But if we want to deep dive into more details, then you can use the replace reducer method to modify the built-in mechanism. So in this tutorial I am not going to cover this scenario, because in our real life scenario we no need this type of actions. If you need, you can go to the Redux doc and learn from here. So let's see. In the reducer function we use the return statement, but when we have switch property, we can instead of return statement we can use a default property. So default will be our return statement. So it will also work, because as soon as it do not match with any request, it will return the state value. So this is same as though it is reached to the next end of the function. Now we have one state value or one dispatch. Say if we have multiple dispatch, so how can we handle that? For that, let's create another dispatch, and this dispatch will be succeed. Actually, when we create request, we do not pass anything, so we no need to pass anything from here. And when our request succeed, we will pass the user data from here. Let's create our user. And now we have two dispatch. Actually, let's in a single line. We have two dispatch. Now we already covered this dispatch. Now we have to cover the succeed scenario in the dispatch method in the reducer function. So when we request, we pass nothing, just want to show the loading flag. That means the loading will be true. So we do not pass anything when our requested comes. So it will be loading will be true. We do not pass anything, just make the loading property to true. Now we have to handle the succeed property. When we have succeed, we at first make the loading to false and add the user. This time our user will be action.payload. Now let's save by file. I can see that at first, in first dispatch, it make our loading to true, and in the second dispatch we may convert the loading to false and add the user property. Let's see when this is the requested method and this is the success method, but what happens when our API fails. So let's a fail scenario, and when our APIs fail, when our type fails, we pass error message that found 404. Now let's handle this dispatch type in our reducer. Every time we create something new, we have to handle that in the reducer function. So I have to create another one. It will be failed and make the loading false, but this time user will be null and error will be action.payload, because when error happens we pass the error message. So let's create a condition here. If true, then log this one, else log this one. Now if I save my file, I can see the success scenario. That means user added in the database or in the store. Now if it will be false, or then I will see that our actually there not error message. Let's see what I miss. Error will be action dot I mistype actually payload. If I save my file, I can see the error message appears in the error and user goes to null. So this is the basic example of a fetch or any network request, because when we try to fetch something, we want to show the loading flag, and when our request succeed, we store our user, and when request fail, we want to show the error message. Now in this scenario, we can see we have hard-coded value in duplicate in both cases, here and here. So we have to type the same text multiple places. So instead of typing the same text in the multiple place, we can create a variable or constant. So constant, we can create the requested will be, and we will create another two. One will be succeed, now instead of hard coding, now replace the code here. And second one will be, it will be the SU succeed, and it will be the failed. Now I have to pass the same constant value in my F file, so that we do not need to type the same text multiple places. So I have to export these functions or export these properties too. For that, I already store or export our store. So I have to create this way. Store and request succeed and fail. Requested succeed failed. Now I am instead of passing the whole module, I am passing the object. So I have to go to my store, and this time our store will be store, and I need succeed failed, actually succeed then requested and the failed. Now replace the hardcode value here from here. Actually remove the text and convert to capital. Now if I save my file, I can see it works exactly as before, but this time our code do not use the repeated code, because when we use the hard-coded value or repeated code, then our chances are that we get some lot of typing issue or typing mistake. So this way we can create a simple reducer function. So let's see how can we create or combine our multiple reducer functions. Suppose I have a single reducer function. Actually I put all the code in the same file. Let's remove our store and the actually create a module in the store. I am creating a file. It will be slice, and then this slice is used for the user. So I will give this slice as a user.js and move the reducer, this reducer in the reducer slice, and I have to export this reducer. So reducer. Now in my index file I have to import this reducer. If I save my file, actually it says something wrong. Requested not defined. In my I have to import move this functions or this method, because this method no need, actually this method no need here anymore. We put the reducer method here, or we can create another slice or another actions. So let's put for simplicity here, and I have to pass same way, this way. Copy this line and replace this line, and instead of store it will be reducer. Now I am passing reducer method and this property, this 6 4 3 constant, and in my app in the reducer slice has this 3. Actually it will be not a store. Let's pass the same thing, else it will be confusing. And store is change this one to reducer. So I am passing the same 4 method from here, 4 options, and will using this here. Now in the store, this time we only need to send the store. Now in my app I have to use the store instead of and we need again these three property from the user slice, because this time we have this property in our user slice. So I have to import from the user slice instead of the store. It will be slice, actually store, then slice, then user. If I save my file, go to my, I can see that everything works fine. Now this time we put our slice in different file. So now why we do that? Because this time we will create multiple slice. For example, we create one slice for user, we will create another slice for the product. I can copy paste or I can type the same command again. Let's copy paste the code. So when we do the copy paste thing, then our chances are that some error happens. And here copy everything and paste here, and this method will be same, this method will be same. This time it will be, instead of user, it will be the product, and I think everything same. Okay, now I have two slice. Now if I go to my app, store, I have to use the reducer slice, import the reducer slice from the, actually I do not, in the user slice I need only the reducer. If I go to the user slice, I need only the reducer and we do not need anything else. Similarly, this time I am try to use the product reducer. So for that I have to use the product reducer. So let's change this reducer name as user reducer. I do not use the product reducer yet. So how can we use the product reducer? For that I have to use the same syntax. Instead of user, it will be product and it will be product reducer. So we have a single reducer to pass to our store. So how can we pass multiple reducer? For that Redux has combined reducer. So reducer is equal to combined reducers from the Redux library, and these combined reducers user will be the user reducer and product will be the product reducer. And now I am passing the reducer. If I save my file, I can see this time I have two slice. One slice is for user, another slice is for product. Actually I did not update, as I says that when we copy paste something, then we get this kind of scenario. Product. Let's see the app page where we dispatch. Let's remove the dispatch. Just console log the store value. I can see I have the two slice. One slice is user, another slice is product. You has loading, user, product, everything is fine. So we are combining two reducers. Now in our next tutorial we will see how can we use the middleware to handle our request or and we will see that how the Redux store works with the pipeline function feature. So let's see in the next tutorial.